You finally get into the executive meeting, but when you speak up, you feel like your voice is brushed aside. You know you've done the work, you know your work has impact, but for whatever reason, your voice is still not registering. If you've ever left the boardroom wondering, why am I still being ignored? This video was for you. If you're not subscribed yet, I invite you to hit the subscribe button, turn notifications to not miss any videos that I drop about ways to elevate your HR career on purpose and with purpose. And tell me, have you ever left a meeting feeling like your voice was pushed aside? Let me know if this has been your reality and how common this is for you, and how did it make you feel? I'm Brittany Graddick, HR leadership career coach, and over the last 17 years, I've gone from being overlooked in executive meetings to leading at the executive table. And I help my clients take the same shift inside my HR leadership accelerator program. What I've learned is this: it's not about how hard you work, it's about how you position your message. The number one reason HR managers get ignored is not because your ideas aren't valuable, it's because we're speaking a different language. Business leaders think in business terms and business language, and unfortunately, sometimes HR speaks primarily in HR. And until you learn how to bridge that gap, your message is not going to resonate. This is what you cannot afford to miss when it comes to getting your message across powerfully. You've got to remember, executives think in business priorities, not HR processes. When you say we need a new performance management system, they hear cost, they hear disruption, they think why fix what's not broken because they don't really see the issues in the same way that you do. However, when you reposition that same message and say that you can talk about ways to reduce turnover by 15%, where you can increase employee retention by giving powerful feedback to your employees, that shifts the conversation from being about cost and revenue, mitigation, to talking about ways to move the business forward. One of the things I love about working in HR is that there's never nothing to do. There's always something to do. So there's always either a new initiative or a new priority that we can focus on, or a new, tool we can leverage. But again, if we only focus on the thing that we're trying to shift, or the thing that we want to implement, or the thing we want to have success in, that's not going to resonate well with those business leaders that we're trying to work alongside, whether it's the CEO, whether it's a CFO, whether it's another C-suite leader. So we've got to find ways to align back to the business priorities in the long run. I've said this before, and I talk about this with my clients, getting them to understand there's so many ways to do HR, and but even better ways to lead HR. So think about the work that you do in these four different categories. I think of this, I call it the HR proficiency pyramid. So the very bottom of your work, you've got the tasks, then very task based. So you're doing individual things, you're putting things together, but you're not necessarily putting programs around it. You're just doing individual things. You're processing payroll, you're administering benefits, you are recruiting employees. Okay, that's fine. That's very valuable work, but it's not going to resonate at the top. On top of that task based work, you've got the process based work where you're thinking about, okay, so not only are you doing a talent acquisition work, you're recruiting, but you're putting a process around it. You've got maybe some checklists or some guides or some tools to help you to streamline the work that you do so that it can become more predictable. You can put a process around that work. It's very important. On top of that, though, you've got database work where you can think about not only what are you doing and how are you doing it, but how well are you doing it? How are you comparing yourself to yourself year over year, quarter over quarter, or how are you comparing yourself to the benchmark, whether it's going out to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, whether it's pulling down some SHRM benchmarking data, but thinking about the data around the work that you're doing so you can measure the success of that work in a very tangible way. People think that HR can't be measured. It can be measured if you know what you're trying to do. Then at the very top, you've got that business impact, that business partner work. Again, not business partner in title, but business partner in focus, where you're not just individually working alone in the lab and just going out to your little box and focusing on only things going to benefit you, but you're thinking about the impact of your work impacting and spreading out around the company to impact the accounting team, to impact the any back office team or frontline team as well, so that the work that you're doing is very holistic and improving the entire process. So again, when you're talking about ways to improve things on the HR side, we're talking about ways to future-proof your success in your career in the age of AI and everything else. You've got to find ways to be collaborative and very consultative in your approach, and not so paper pushing and being so task focused. Second thing you've got to realize, influence comes from framing, not from effort. Listing out every single thing that HR does will never resonate. They don't really understand. That's the thing about working HR. A successful HR department is one that people really don't notice, honestly, because it runs like a well-oiled machine. People don't notice because people don't know all the work that goes into having this very simple output for other people. They don't know the days and the hours that goes into make sure process runs effectively for payroll every 2 weeks. They don't understand all that goes into all of the interviewing, all of the scheduling, all the coordinating, all these things to make sure you've got a person in that seat on day one. They don't understand all that goes into make sure you've got the right benefits package for your employees that are not only in compliance, but that are competitive for the market. So again, when you're thinking about all the things that you do, when you're talking about your value and not being ignored in these meetings, you can't only focus on all the things that you do because they just look at that as your job because it is your job. So you've got to find ways to make it resonate. So it's not about individually what are you working on, but framing it. So the question you should ask yourself is, why is this work important? What's the value of this work? If this work was to not happen, then what will happen as a result of that? Or if this work was to fail, then what will be the impact of that? So think about why you're working so important and not just think about the individual tasks because that will never get you the value that you want. It's really about why is this work so key. Over explaining all of your HR processes just confuses them because the listener doesn't know HR the way that you know HR. So instead of just confusing them by giving them every little thing that you're working on, distill that down to a single focus, a single impact that you're making by this new process, by this initiative, by this new tool to speak about why this work is so important. I've got more to share, but before I get to that, hit that like button to let me know if this is resonating with you. And also drop a comment down below. Tell me, when you're giving your updates, are you focusing more on the processes that you do or on the outcomes? I'm really curious. And that could be one or the other, could be the reason why you might not get the response that you want. But tell me, just drop process and drop outcome if that's the way you're framing your updates for your leadership team. A third key thing you cannot afford to lose right now is understanding that buy in starts before the meeting. Executives ignore ideas when the first time they're hearing it is with everyone else or is in the boardroom. Think about it. Anytime you hear a new idea, if you're a leader of a team or a leader of a project, you're probably thinking about all the reasons why this thing might not work, all the must go into making sure this thing is successful, what it's going to take attention away from, how much time this new thing is going to take. So executives don't want to think about all those things for the very first time. So you want to find ways to find champions, whether it's your direct supervisor, whether it's going to be peer leaders going to help you to pull this thing off. But I, I lovingly call it having a meeting before the meeting. And it's not quite that, but I can see how someone could think it's that way. But it's really more along the lines of getting people on board so that when you're presenting a new idea, presenting a new initiative, you've already spoken to people and gotten in front of those objections to make sure that it's going to be as successful as possible. So whether it's giving your CEO a heads up, say, hey, I'm thinking about this. I want to bounce this idea off you to see what I might be missing. Or if you know it's going to take some work or some resource away from another team or from another team, just partnering with that team leader or that team champion to think about ways y'all can work collaboratively with it. Those are going to be the things going to help you to position yourself appropriately for your career because leaders bring along other leaders to get things done. We don't bring problems to the table and just ask everyone to figure it out as they go. We say, okay, here's the problem that we've discovered, but this is how we want to get in front of it, and this is how we already plan to approach it. But what are your thoughts? When you're asking really more for buy-in, or you're asking more for their 2 cents as opposed to their full approval or their full direction, that lands completely differently. Understand you've got to get buy-in before the meeting starts. You can't let that one moment be your only moment that you're presenting a new idea. And again, you got to give people time to digest it. Just as long as you've had to digest it, to think about it, to roll the idea around in your head, give them the courtesy of having that same opportunity. Building these relationships and these champions beforehand gives you the ammunition that you need to really be assertive and to be very focused on your approach. Again, being passive and giving a passive update, that's not going to be anything that's going to give you that spirit that you need to be positioned powerfully. You got to show that you're taking it seriously. You've got to show that you're a leader and that you've thought it through. The best thing you can do in this case is frame your ideas as strategic solutions to the executive goals. Here's the truth. Getting ignored in executive meetings is not about your worth and it's not about your skills. It's about learning to position yourself and your message powerfully so that it can't be ignored. You must learn how to speak in ways that executives are wired to hear. If you're ready to stop being overlooked and start being seen as the strategic leader, this is the work that I do inside of the HR Leadership Accelerator program. Comment down below what the words HR career success, and I'll send you a link to book a one-on-one call with me. Talk about your goals, talk about your career aspirations, where you want to see next in your role, and also whether working together could be right for you right now. In this program, I help you learn how to know yourself and learn yourself so well that you position your work powerfully, you position your message powerfully, and you build powerful relationships in the workplace so that you can be successful for this role and for those to come. Getting ignored in the boardroom is frustrating, but here's the bigger issue. If your teams don't feel safe speaking up, you'll never be seen as a true leader. Watch this video next to talk about psychological safety, why so many HR managers fail to create this, and what you can do to fix it. I'll see you there.